Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and I'm here with our resident expert to really unpack some incredible source material today.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to dive in.
So to start us off, I want you, the listener, to imagine walking down a literal crack in the Earth's surface, like a massive geological scar extending all the way from the Jordan Valley down to the Red Sea.
Yeah, it actually stretches right down through Kenya to Uganda, too.
Right, exactly. So you're walking through the absolute lowest point on Earth, and geographically speaking, with every step you take on this path, things are getting deeper and they're getting darker.
It is an incredibly dramatic, almost oppressive setting, and that geographical descent, it perfectly mirrors the escalating psychological tension of the material we're diving into today.
It totally does, because our mission for this deep dive is to unpack Mark chapter 10. And this isn't just, a random collection of 5 stories.
Yeah. No, not at all. It operates as a masterclass in divine reversals. Jesus is walking down this valley toward Jerusalem, and as he walks, the social norms of the ancient world, which frankly are the exact same social norms of our modern world, are just systematically dismantled.
Power, status, wealth, independence, all of it gets completely flipped on its head. It really has the pacing of like the final tense act of a thriller movie.
Oh, absolutely. The climax in Jerusalem is looming over everything.
Right, and the fascinating thing here isn't just the theology Jesus introduces, but his method. I mean, he isn't renting out a lecture hall or giving prepared speeches.
No, he uses spontaneous, chaotic, everyday interruptions, like people literally stepping into his path on a dirt road, and he uses that to tear down their entire worldview.
Which brings us to the first interruption on this road. Because if you want to challenge a society's values, you don't start with abstract politics, you start in the home.
Exactly. You start with the most foundational human relationship, which is marriage.
So the scene opens with an ambush. The Pharisees approached Jesus with a question about divorce. But let's be real about what's actually happening here. This wasn't a genuine, we're struggling with an ethical dilemma kind of question.
Oh, not even a little bit.
These guys were professional hecklers.
Right.
Think of the people who show up to town halls with the sole intent of trapping the speaker in a rhetorical corner.
Right, like they want him to say something that will instantly alienate half of his audience.
Exactly. So they throw out the bait. They ask, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife?
And to grasp the lethality of that trap, we have to understand the bitter cultural debate happening in Jewish society right then.
Okay.
It was split between 2 prominent religious schools. You had Rabbi Shammai and Rabbi Hillel.
Okay, so break those down for us. What was the difference?
Well, Rabbi Shammai took an incredibly strict view. He argued there were only very severe specific grounds for a man to divorce his wife.
But Rabbi Hill's school was the broad, lenient party. And, I mean, when we say lenient, it's staggering by modern standards. Under Hillel's interpretation, a man could divorce his wife for almost any inconvenience.
Yeah, literally anything.
Like if she had too loud a voice in the house, or if she simply burned the breakfast, he could just hand her a certificate of divorce and dismiss her.
It's wild. It engineered this deeply entrenched, disposable culture. Women in this framework were stripped of agency and treated essentially like luggage.
Like luggage you could just toss out when it became cumbersome. So the Pharisees are demanding Jesus pick a side, stand with Shammai and anger the masses who like their loopholes, or stand with Hillel and look like a compromiser.
And normally a public speaker in that spot tries to find a middle ground, right? Or they pivot to a safer topic.
But Jesus does neither. He recognizes that they're asking about what Moses commanded regarding divorce certificates. But he just reframes the entire premise.
Right. He argues that Moses merely allowed those certificates as a concession to human stubbornness. You can't govern a fractured, hard-hearted society without some basic damage control.
But instead of debating the parameters of the exit strategy, Jesus takes them all the way back to the architect's original blueprint, Genesis. One man, one woman, one covenant.
He bypasses the legal loopholes entirely. He establishes that breaking one family to form a new one isn't just some legal procedure. It is tearing apart something God joined together.
And the underlying logic here is just profound. Jesus isn't acting as a rigid moralist trying to make people miserable.
Not at all. He is actively fighting for the dignity of womanhood in a system that routinely victimized them. The Pharisees were exclusively concerned with protecting a man's privilege to discard his wife.
Yeah, they wanted the escape hatch.
Exactly. But Jesus elevates marriage to a sacred, unbreakable standard, holding men accountable to treat women with equal honor and
A
status.
total paradigm shift.
Ah.
But I do want to weave in a crucial caveat here, because obviously conversations about divorce carry a lot of pain for people.
Oh, for sure. It's a very sensitive topic.
Right. And the sources note that while Jesus holds this incredibly high, sacred view of the marriage covenant, he doesn't treat falling short of it as an unforgivable failure.
Right. If you look at his broader interactions, like the woman caught in adultery, he certainly acknowledges the sin. He tells her to go and sin no more.
But his immediate posture is grace. He says, "Neither do I condemn you." The standard remains high, but the grace for the brokenness is absolute.
That distinction is so vital. The ideal isn't lowered, but the person who fractures it isn't discarded.
Which really forces us to look in the mirror. I mean, we aren't arguing about Rabbi Hillel today, but we absolutely live in a disposable culture. It's the water we swim in.
Oh, completely. We have disposable phones, disposable careers, disposable friendships.
The second something introduces friction into our lives, the default is to replace it. Jesus is introducing a radical mindset that says when it's broken, you don't replace it. You repair it.
And if he's dismantling a system that discards vulnerable wives, it makes total sense that his next clash on this road involves the other deeply vulnerable group in the ancient household.
Children.
Yeah.
And the imagery of this next scene often gets clouded by, those old Victorian-era hymns that paint this soft, glowing picture of mothers presenting their babies to a gentle Jesus.
Yeah, the stained glass window version.
Exactly. But looking at the original text, there's a masculine adjective used. It was actually the fathers bringing their children to Jesus for a blessing.
Which is such a great detail. It highlights fathers taking active responsibility for the spiritual lives of their kids. But the focus quickly shifts to the disciples who start acting like heavy-handed bouncers at an exclusive club.
They just start shooing the fathers and children away.
Right, because they just finished a heavy intellectual debate about Mosaic divorce law with the religious elite. In their minds, this movement is for sophisticated adults doing serious theological work.
They view these kids as a massive nuisance, dragging down the prestige of the operation.
And Jesus becomes indignant at this. He stops the entire procession and declares, "Let the children come to me, for to such belongs the kingdom of God." He sets the child up as the ultimate model for faith.
Now, I always wrestle with that phrase, childlike faith.
Yeah.
Because people tend to romanticize it,
Yeah.
equating it with moral innocence or angelic purity.
Yeah, which is just not accurate.
Let's be real. Anyone who has spent an afternoon with a toddler knows they're not perfectly innocent. They are fiercely territorial, they throw tantrums, they hit.
Oh yeah, they're little tiny dictators sometimes.
Exactly. So the mechanism of faith here cannot be moral perfection. It has to be something else.
You're hitting on the exact mechanism there. It has nothing to do with innocence. It is entirely about posture. The kingdom of God requires 3 specific postures that come naturally to a child, but that adults systematically train themselves out of.
Okay, let's unpack those.
First, an open mind. A child is ready to believe and imagine, whereas adults use their intellect to argue, defend their biases, and close themselves off. Second, an open hand. A child will joyfully receive a gift. An adult's pride demands they earn their way, often rejecting grace because it feels like charity.
We want to show our receipts. We want to prove we deserve the space we occupy.
Exactly. And the third posture is an open heart. A child is ready to trust implicitly, long before the betrayals and painful experiences of life build up a callous layer of cynicism.
There's a brilliant story from the sources that captures this stripping away of adult cynicism. It's about a man named Di Pottinger.
Oh, right, the fisherman from the Shetland Islands.
Yeah, this massive 19-stone fisherman. Just a true captain of industry who commanded a heavy, dangerous fishing boat. He was physically intimidating, the kind of guy who had survived decades of harsh reality.
Definitely not a naive guy.
Not at all. Yet in the prayer meeting, this giant of a man simply looked up toward the ceiling, tears in his eyes, and said one word. He just said, "Dad."
Wow.
He didn't use theological jargon. He didn't build an intellectual argument. He completely bypassed his adult defenses and accessed that open-hearted dependence.
It really evokes the image of a young child sleeping soundly in a chaotic, crowded airport. Like the parents are stressed, checking departure boards, worrying about lost luggage. But the child is fast asleep in their father's arms.
Because they completely trust the one carrying them.
Exactly. Faith isn't about comprehending every variable of the journey. It's about complete reliance on the one leading it.
So we've established that the absolute prerequisite for entering this kingdom is dependence. You have to be empty-handed. which sets up a fascinating psychological collision because the very next person Jesus encounters is the ultimate picture of self-sufficiency.
The rich young ruler.
A guy who has it all: wealth, societal success, moral integrity. He runs up, kneels in the dirt, and asks, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?"
He spent his life successfully keeping the rules. He checks every single box, yet he has this gnawing internal realization that he doesn't actually possess real life.
And I love this detail. Jesus doesn't shame him. Jesus looks at him and feels genuine love for his honesty. But the diagnosis is sharp.
Very sharp. Jesus tells him, "You lack one thing. Go, sell what you have, give to the poor, and come, follow me."
People misinterpret the mechanics of this command all the time. The assumption is that Jesus is universally condemning wealth, that the man's bank account was simply too high and he needed to achieve a state of poverty to be holy.
But Jesus didn't say the man lacked poverty. He said he lacked him. The wealth was merely the specific obstacle blocking the door.
The issue wasn't the presence of money, it was the ownership of the man's heart. He was basically paralyzed by what we might call the monkey trap.
Oh, I love the monkey trap analogy.
It explains human psychology better than almost anything else. So in certain regions, hunters catch monkeys using a heavy jar with a very narrow, tapered neck. They drop a piece of fruit or a nut inside the jar.
Right.
The monkey reaches its hand in, grabs the fruit, and forms a tight fist. But the neck of the jar is too narrow for a clenched fist to pass back through.
The mechanics of the trap rely entirely on the monkey's own greed.
Precisely. The jar isn't holding the monkey. The monkey has more than enough strength to pull its hand out and run away. The only thing keeping the monkey trapped is its absolute refusal to unclench its fist and let go of the fruit.
And that is exactly what is happening to the rich young ruler. He wasn't trapped by his gold, he was trapped by his inability to let it go in order to gain Christ.
He walks away sorrowful because his hands are squeezed so tightly around his possessions, he cannot physically receive what Jesus is offering.
And the disciples' reaction to this interaction is utter shock. We have to remember, in their cultural framework, massive wealth wasn't seen as a hurdle. It was viewed as the ultimate proof of God's blessing.
They assumed if you were rich, God favored you. So if this wealthy, upstanding guy can't buy a ticket in, they figure nobody can.
And Jesus leans into their shock with a piece of brilliant, absurd comedy. He tells them it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God.
Now, I grew up hearing preachers explain this away by saying there was a literal tiny gate in the walls of Jerusalem called the Needle's Eye, and a camel had to get on its knees and have its baggage removed to squeeze through.
Oh yeah, it sounds very spiritual and humble.
Right. But is that actually true?
It is historically entirely fabricated. There was no such gate. People invent these complex architectural theories because they are uncomfortable with the fact that Jesus is simply telling a joke.
He's using stand-up comedy mechanics. I mean, think about a camel. It's a ridiculous, awkward animal. It's knobby, it spits, it looks like a horse designed by a committee in the dark.
Exactly. Jesus is taking the largest, most uncooperative animal in Palestine and suggesting you try to thread it through the microscopic eye of a sewing needle.
He's painting a picture of absolute farcical impossibility. His point is clear salvation through human effort or self-sufficiency isn't just difficult, it is impossible.
Peter, predictably, misses the nuance and tries to secure his own status. He points out, well, we left everything to follow you.
He wants a gold star for unclenching his fist.
He really does. Jesus reassures them that sacrifice is never wasted, but he caps it with a warning. Many who are first will be last, and the last first. Basically saying, don't brag about your starting speed, Peter. The kingdom is judged by how you finish.
You would think, after watching a wealthy man destroyed by his own ambition and hearing a direct warning against pride, the disciples would start to internalize this.
But the human craving for hierarchy is incredibly stubborn.
It really is. The narrative takes us further down the road, and the tension spikes. Jesus is striding ahead toward Jerusalem. To use a visceral comparison from the sources, watching him walk this path was like watching a man deliberately lower his own head into the mouth of a lion.
He gathers his friends and explicitly predicts his own execution. He outlines the mockery, the spitting, the scourging, and the cross. He's making it terrifyingly clear that he isn't walking into a trap, he is orchestrating a sacrifice.
And immediately, in one of the most staggering displays of tone-deaf ambition in history, James and John approach him with a demand. Prompted by their mother, they say, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask."
They want the prime seats of power, one on his right and one on his left when he comes into his glory.
What drives that level of blindness? Jesus is talking about a bloody cross, and they are asking for corner offices.
They are operating on a completely different frequency. They are likely remembering the Mount of Transfiguration, a moment earlier in their journey where they saw Jesus literally glowing with divine light on a mountaintop. They saw the ultimate triumphant king.
They want that glory. They want the crowns, but they want to completely bypass the cross.
It's the modern human condition, isn't it? We want the CEO title without the 80-hour weeks. We want the fitness without the grueling diet.
Jesus asked them, "Can you drink the cup I drink?" Meaning the cup of God's wrath and suffering. They arrogantly say they can, and eventually, history shows they do suffer for the movement.
But the brutal irony is that when Jesus is finally lifted up in his glory on the cross, the seats on his literal right and left don't go to ambitious disciples. They go to two bleeding thieves being executed beside him.
Wow. And when the other 10 disciples catch wind of James and John's backroom maneuvering, they are furious. But not because they missed the point of the cross. They're furious because they wanted those prime seats for themselves.
Which forces Jesus to halt everything and deliver the core thesis of the entire chapter.
It boils down to titles versus towels. Jesus points to the Roman Empire and the world around them. The world's power structure is entirely top-down. It's obsessed with titles. CEOs, presidents, directors.
Success in the world is defined by how many people are underneath you, serving your vision.
But Jesus introduces a bottom-up reversal. He says, if you want to be truly great, you don't fight for a title. You pick up a towel.
He anchors this in his own identity. He says, "For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." The King of the universe defines his kingship by washing dirty feet.
The world screams at you to climb over others to the top. Jesus demonstrates that true authority is found by kneeling at the bottom.
So we have these disciples who possess perfect 20/20 physical vision, yet they are stumbling around completely blind to the reality of what Jesus is doing.
They can't see the cross. They can't see the value of service. It takes a literal blind man to finally see things clearly.
Which brings us to the final encounter in Jericho. And Jericho carries immense geographical and historical weight. It is one of the oldest cities on earth, and in the ancient mindset, it was synonymous with depravity and destruction.
It was the home of Rahab the harlot, right? Who, in a beautiful stroke of grace, is actually in Jesus' own genealogy.
Yes, exactly. So they're in the darkest, slowest city, and sitting in the dirt by the road is Bartimaeus, a blind beggar. He hears the noise of the crowd, realizes Jesus is passing by, and he just starts screaming.
"Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." The crowd is mortified. They try to hush him. He's ruining the decorum of the parade, but he ignores them and screams even louder.
It is the raw mechanics of desperation.
If you see a man drowning in the ocean, you don't see him worrying about his dignity. A drowning man doesn't care if his hair looks bad, or if he's being too loud, or if he's embarrassing the people on the beach.
No, he screams with every ounce of air in his lungs because his life depends on it.
Proud, self-sufficient people don't cry out for grace like that. They worry about the optics. Desperate people abandon the optics entirely.
And the contrast here with the rich young ruler is the ultimate payoff of the chapter. The rich man approached Jesus with hands overflowing with his own morality, his wealth, and his resume.
His hands were so full he couldn't grasp the kingdom.
Exactly, and he walked away in despair. Bartimaeus is the polar opposite. He is a beggar. He has zero status. When Jesus calls for him, he throws off his cloak, which was likely his shelter, his only valuable possession, and comes to Jesus with completely empty hands.
Because his hands are empty, he can receive. Jesus asks him the most profound question. What do you want me to do for you? Bartimaeus asks for his sight. He gets it. And notice what happens next.
The rich man was formally invited to follow Jesus and couldn't do it.
Right. But Bartimaeus receives his sight and, without even needing an invitation, immediately falls into step behind Jesus on the road to the cross. It is infinitely easier for a spiritual beggar to follow Jesus than someone weighed down by the burden of their own supposed greatness.
It resolves the entire journey perfectly. The physically blind man possessed the spiritual sight to recognize the Messiah and accept his grace, while the religious elite and the ambitious disciples were still fumbling in the dark.
Let's pull all these threads together as we wrap up. This descent into the Jordan Valley through Mark 10, it's a systematic dismantling of how we build our lives. We've watched human logic get turned upside down so we can finally see reality.
Marriage is a sacred covenant to be repaired, not a convenience to be discarded.
Children are the ultimate blueprint for open-handed faith, not an interruption.
Wealth isn't a guaranteed stamp of divine approval. It's a monkey trap that can paralyze your soul.
Greatness is achieved by picking up a towel to serve, not a title to rule. And sight belongs to the desperate beggar, not the arrogant elite.
The challenge now is moving this from ancient history to our present reality. Because the human hardwiring hasn't changed, we all operate with blind spots. We all default to the world's power structures.
We really do.
So the question for you listening is, where is your clenched fist? What is the title, the comfort, or the ambition that you are gripping so tightly it's keeping you trapped?
Every single one of us is wrestling with a monkey trap. So here is the thought I want you to carry with you today. Put yourself in the dirt outside Jericho. Imagine the procession stops, the noise fades, and Jesus is standing directly in front of you. Strip away your resume. Drop your sophisticated adult defenses. Let go of whatever you're clutching in your hands. If he looked right at you and asked that exact same question, what do you want me to do for you? What would your answer actually be?